So I'd like to say hi to everybody. I know everybody's pretty much in all over the world that's in our group. Our co-host tonight is Laura. Oh, and then our speaker tonight is Lon Strickler. Not sure if I always pronounce that, Lon, if I'm not doing it.
No, you pronounced it fine. You did well.
Okay. So we are going to do things a little bit different tonight. Lon I've known for a few years, and I just found out tonight he also knew Mike Craig. So there's always a connection in people. And I'd like to welcome everybody who's here tonight. So what we're going to do tonight is more question and answers. And we're going to have people raise their hand on the monitor. And it is reaction. So it looks like this, which is on my profile. Put too many hands up. Okay. So I'm going to introduce Lon, who I think is an extraordinary man who knows about UFOs, Bigfoot, Mothman. He has a podcast show. He has about 12 books, recently written a book. He talks about UFO entities and just about everything that's a little bit different. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Lon, if you want to start. Introduce yourself and talk about a little few things that you investigate.
Well, I'm a Fortean researcher and author, and I published the Phantoms of Monsters blog, which I began in 2005. And it has steadily grown since then. I think right now we have about 30,000 subscribers online, offline, and everywhere else in between. My research and reports have been featured on hundreds of online media sources. Several of these published reports have been presented on various television segments, including the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, Sci-Fi's Paranormal Witness, Fact and Fake Paranormal Files, and Destination America's Monsters and Mysteries in America, which included a segment about my encounter in Sykesville, Maryland back in 1981. I've been interviewed on hundreds of radio and online broadcasts, including, I think, 7 or 8 appearances on Coast to Coast AM. And I've written 9 books, 4 of which are now still in print, which you can find on Amazon. You just put my name, Lon Strickler, in there, and you know, they'll come up. I actually investigate a lot of different things. I've been involved with the paranormal since I've been young. I had my first experience when I was 9, which led me to find out that I'm intuitive. I have worked hundreds of hauntings, infestation, clearings, and I'm a trained remote viewer. I was trained by an individual who was retired from MI6 with the British government. So I use remote viewing as part of my investigations. For the most part, hauntings and such, when there's spirit or entity infestations. I have used it with cryptids, but to a lesser degree. And but there's not really much I haven't been involved with. Books have been subject to the Chicago Mothman incidents that are still going on, have been going on. My team has been on the beginning, in the nexus of all these sightings, which we have now at this point 141 sightings that we believe are valid. I've written 2 books about that, plus other winged cryptids. I wrote a book titled Alien Disclosure Experiencers Expose Reality, where I have cases that I have been involved with, abduction encounters and non-UFO related cases. as well. My last book was titled The Mean Humanoids, Modern Myths Are Real Monsters, and it's about the current phenomena that has been steadily getting larger, involving these pale crawler humanoids and the possibility that these may be manifested or mind manifested thought forms, or maybe we're looking at a nexus of another humanoid species. So I put a lot of the cases I've received and worked on over the years, and I put it out there for the public to determine their thoughts or theories as to what this is. So there's really not a whole lot I haven't been involved with. I mean, I'm actually in my oh God, I'm really dating myself, but I guess 52nd year of this now. And yeah, I've been doing this a long time. I concentrate a lot of what I do here in Pennsylvania. I got a pretty nice team here in Pennsylvania and throughout North America. Now we have about 18 investigators that we look into cases, try to get boots on the ground. I've got 25 other affiliates that are involved as well. So, we kind of cover the gamut as far as the paranormal and supernatural, including UFOs and other types of unexplained phenomena. That's pretty well it.
And I've also read reports from you that you've posted on your website about Mothman too, or Bigfoot. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, Bigfoot was kind of the big thing. When I had my encounter in 81 and started getting into cryptids, it piqued my interest when I had this encounter, and I expanded my investigations into these unknown creatures, and it kind of expanded beyond that. So we do everything. I mean, any type of cryptid we're looking into. We do lichen or upright canine investigations here in Pennsylvania for the most part, but I do them all over North America as well as the winged humanoids, of course, with the Mothman phenomena, and now with these crawlers and other unknown cryptids. I mean, it's always something that seems to pop up. I'm never surprised by anything anymore. I used to be. I don't think much shocks me at this point, though. I say that, and something will come up, and I'll just shake my head and not believe what's going on. But when I do take case reports from folks, I give the experiencer the benefit of the doubt until I prove otherwise. And it's nothing for me to be on a case for years at some point. So yeah, this is something this is all I do now. I'm retired, and I mean, this is 24/7 with me.
Okay, we already have a question. Ricky, do you want to turn your sound on? And I don't know if you want to turn your video on, but you want to ask your question?
Hi there. Sorry, I normally am visible, but I'm not dressed and I'm eating, which is 2 strikes against me. So sorry about that.
That's no problem.
All right. So I've watched a lot of these shows that are on history, on alternate channels as well. Fascinating. More and more is coming out, especially as the government are bit by bit declassifying so much. Okay, I keep hearing all sorts of new things, such as there are aliens amongst us that are invisible. This I'm having a bit of trouble with, but I'm curious about hybrid aliens that may be amongst us. Part human, part alien, from the future or from a galaxy far, far, far away. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on the alien phenomena is probably a bit different than most people. But, I have looked into this for so many years, and there's a few things that come out that are fascinating to me. My personal feeling is when people report an alien being, an extraterrestrial they have an encounter with, or they have an abduction, apparent abduction, these are always humanoid type beings. In other words, they have arms, legs, heads. They act like us, even though they're in different forms. They have that human aspect to them. I personally believe that the human species is a universal species. In other words, I'm saying that I believe those beings that people see are evolved humans that have made their way back somehow. Now, why are they here? Do they have an agenda? That may very well be. But I believe they have come back to maybe right some wrongs or to modify things at some point. I get a lot of questions about hybridization. I've known a few people who've experienced this, who've had eggs or sperm taken, or have been through, have lost fetuses after the first trimester. I've had that several times with witnesses. I believe the whole ball of wax evolves around maybe one specific thing. I mean, it could be a larger agenda. But one thing that many of the experiencers have told me over the years is that these beings are very much like us in one respect, that overall, just like humans, they believe in a higher power. Is a religion to them? Well, it could be classified as that, but it's something they believe in. And by saying that, I think since I believe they're evolved humans, and some evidence points to that just by the way they talk, I think there's one thing about the human species, the current human species, the Earth species, that they do not possess anymore, and that's a life force, a soul, if you want to call it that. That when the human body dies, the human soul, the human life force ascends to another level. And that's a concept they do not understand, and that it's hard for them to believe. Physiologically, maybe it's something to do with the way they think. But I think a lot of the abductions, experimentations, hybridization has something to do with that they're trying to find something that they lost a long time ago. I'm not saying they're jealous of humans, but I think it's one aspect of the whole humanoid phenomena that they're trying to find back again.
Okay, that's really interesting. I have a couple of thoughts on that, and then I'll let someone else talk to you. This is all very interesting. The visions that we get from aliens coming from a spaceship, walking around, I question why they all look identical, absolutely identical. So my thought is, why couldn't they be robots, future robots? I mean, we haven't quite gotten to that soft, really human looking robot. We're close, but they're all identical, which is craziness. The other thing is, I would always do an association, no matter what I do in life, there's association. We are aliens now. We've gone on to the moon. Okay, we were aliens there. We are now working our way on Mars. Again, we're aliens. Why are we there? We're curious. We're looking to see what is possible. Mining, perhaps, something that we might need. Why wouldn't all the other aliens be coming here for the same purpose, out of curiosity, to see what we are about, and also what they can benefit from all this investigation? So now it's your thoughts.
Well, if you look at the timeline of Earth, I mean, there has been at least 6 extinction periods from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, who's to say that there were other humans or other human-like beings here before we were here, before we evolved, or before we were even maybe placed on this planet, or hybridization took place before, a cross between whatever was here and whatever came from, from space or wherever. I don't know that. I mean, that's a hard question to ask or to answer. I think they are here. I think they've been here. I think they're a part of us. I think we're the experiment that went well.
Oh,
I think they had an agenda from the beginning. I think they're looking into more of singularity. I think overall they want to be a lot like us, and they want us to be a lot like them. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, but I think they do have an agenda, and that may very well be what it is. I mean, I think they do miss aspects of what the original humans were like. And I'm not even saying we're the original humans. There could have been something we evolved from that could have been much different than the ape or the some other hairy hominid that from previous times. I'm not necessarily saying the Darwin theory is bunk, but I think there has been some intervention. And I didn't believe it at first. I mean, there was a time when I was very stuck with evolution and believed it wholeheartedly. And that's not only to do with humans, but it has to do with the whole life cycle on this planet. But I think there has been intervention. And I think that we have evolved as possibly some intervention by these beings.
well, I said I wasn't going to talk anymore, but speaking of intervention, I think we are making leaps and bounds in science and technology and medicine. I mean, what was the news yesterday that they've discovered that they could take our skin and actually reverse it 30 years? Well, I mean, they can work on our DNA. There's CRISPR, there's so much that's available. A lot of it's held back, a lot of it becomes a mess, but eventually, yeah, we're living longer. I have no idea about the other layers that have gone on, which they keep discovering. Archaeologists and all the ground penetrating machines are able to find all sorts of previous lives that went on before they got covered up by who knows what, nature. It's so much to know. One last question, I promise you this is the last one. Is there any correlation between, I mean, everybody would love to know what happens after they die. So we talk about shedding this body, which is, a lot of it's quite useless. And as you get older, it becomes more useless. But so there is a spirit, supposedly a spirit, and we know Einstein's theory of energy into matter, back into energy. You never lose energy. So it's energy out there somewhere. I'm really, really curious if there is a correlation between anything to do with what is out there, including the alien and alien technology, and where are we going? So do you have a thought on that, or are they
Yeah,
separate?
I do believe that does happen. I mean, I have been involved with some regression sessions with people who have talked about past lives. Now, I don't necessarily buy into all that, but I think there's something to that. I think that when the human body does die, that our life force, our spirit ascends. I mean, there's a lot of evidence to where sometimes the spirit gets stuck here, what people will call an earthbound, which causes hauntings because they're trying to make connections with the living, and the living don't understand that. And, they're causing noises, and people are touched and they hear things, and, the signals come through. Sometimes these spirits want to be here for whatever reason. They may have died suddenly and don't even realize that they're gone. They're confused. They didn't want to leave because they felt they needed to be around to watch someone or to help someone. The human spirit has its own free will, basically. You know, when I had been involved with hauntings and trying to move energy on to another plane, and look, I don't know where it goes to. I'm not saying I know exactly where it goes to. I can sense other beings coming down or coming forth, manifesting to move on these energies. I have been able to detect that as part of the actual RV or the clearing itself. But where they take them, that's something I just don't know. But I do believe that we do go to what maybe be classified as a way station of some type where our energy is reused. There have been a lot of evidence for people who have grown up and known, even kids know that they were here before, and they spout off historical fact of something they shouldn't even know. It's fascinating. I don't necessarily buy into all of it, but it is fascinating. So yeah, I think I think we can move on. I think it's you know, the whole reincarnation thing may have something to it. It may very well be maybe an actual phenomena, but you know, I think the connection with other beings is more than what people may give it credit for. I think we're connected in a lot of different ways.
Thank you. Thank you for your input on that. I'll let someone else question.
Yeah, we have another question by Michael OGDEN.
Was that Michael Ogden?
Yeah, hey.
Yes.
Yeah, my name's Michael. I'm from Ogden, Utah. So my question is, so when you're talking about hauntings, do you have experiences with some sort of exorcisms or cleansing of the haunting sites that you investigate? If you do, what's the process like, and what's the theory behind the cleansing?
When it comes to exorcism, I don't get involved with that. I have witnessed exorcisms. You know, when I get a case where I believe that there's a malevolency that is so great that I can't really do much for it. And let's say we had an earthbound energy that is just very destructive and does not want to leave. I have no way of moving that on. And I will tell the person who had called me in that you may want to consider having a priest or pastor come in using the rites of, you know, whatever rites they use. And I have witnessed that. You know, it's all subjective, basically. I have seen it and not really experienced it to know that what they did helped. But I do know when I'm involved with the clearing, first of all, if I go to this, let's start from the beginning with the case. I gather as much evidence as I possibly can. I do remote view sessions with even myself or a few other colleagues. We confer, get the evidence that we believe is pertinent to the case. We will talk to the victim about it. Find out if there's some things that they can recall that has something to do with maybe the haunting or this infestation. And sometimes it's even attachments. A lot of time it's attachments, but it hasn't got to that level where what people will call a demon. And I don't necessarily like using that word demon. Evil is evil in my mind. Some just worse than others. But if I think that we can help, and we can make a connection with that energy on this plane, that we can either summon, look, I use angels, you know, a lot of people will think that's crazy, but I am very in tune with angels, a higher degree of being that we use, and myself and others have used to help facilitate moving these energies, these stuck energies, to another level. And I'm an intuitive, and I have the ability to do that. I have no proof of doing that. My only proof is that once it's over, things have calmed down. And, you know, through follow-ups and maintenance with, and I stick with the client for months afterwards. And to see that if things are, you know, have calmed down, if things have stopped. And quite frankly, if you go to my website, if you go to my team website at cryptidhunters.org, I have a section on the right-hand column on the web section with testimonials with a lot of the people I've worked with. And you know, these are testimonials from clients who I have personally worked with and have been successful with. And yeah, it's and I tell you, of all the things that I have done as far as the paranormal, that's probably the most satisfying, when you can clear an energy. We call it spirit rescue. We're not only rescuing the victim, the client, we're rescuing the spirit itself. Many times they're stuck, and I think when they realize that they can move to another level, and their torment on this earth plane, and they realize they're dead, it's gone, that they easily do leave.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ron Thomas, do you want to ask your question and unmute yourself?
If I understood you correctly, you mentioned that you had a direct experience with the cryptid or Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
And could you elaborate, if that's right, could you tell us more about the details of your experience?
Yeah, I actually had two cryptid encounters back in 1981, and I had an encounter with a Bigfoot in Sykesville, Maryland. And in 1988, me and two other gentlemen had a encounter with a winged humanoid here in Pennsylvania. Now, the Bigfoot encounter took place on May 9th, 1981. I was living in Sykesville, Maryland at the time. And I was fly fishing on the South Branch of the Patapsco River. This is an area I'd been to many, many times. And I was standing in the river, and it wasn't very wide. There was about a 30-foot wide stretch, you know, not too deep as well. And on the other side, on the other bank, there was a very, you know, there was a kind of a pebble beach, but there was a lot of weeds, a lot of high weeds and such. And I happened to notice a dog over there. And I didn't pay the dog any mind until the dog yelped. And when the dog yelped, I looked over there, and I saw something stand up in the weeds. It was huge. I mean, I only saw it from the waist up, but it was massive. And I didn't know what I was looking at. Look, I've heard of Bigfoot. I didn't even know what, at that time, I didn't know what that really was, because it wasn't something I investigated. Of course, you know, at that time, that was the time of the Boggy Creek movie and the whole legend and all that. So people were aware of it. People knew of the Patterson Gimlin film and such. But it was something I wasn't really involved with. So as I stood there in my waders looking at this thing, it moved to my left and walked out of the weeds. And it stood there on the riverbank and was looking directly at me. And this thing, I would say, was anywhere from 7.5 to 8 foot tall. Massive, lots of muscles, definitely male. I could see the genitalia in this thing. Had kind of matted dark brown hair. And had like a conical head on it, but the face was what really threw me off because it looked more human than it did ape. Now I had the real thick brow ridge on it and had a wide nose and such, but that was the only physical traits that would look like an ape to me. I mean, let's put it this way: if I had a gun, I wouldn't have shot it, and I wouldn't have done that anyway. But I think we locked eyes for about 10 seconds. It was making a clicking sound. I think it was gnashing its teeth, maybe like a nervous tick that it encountered something that wasn't familiar with, which was me. And I think we watched each other for like 10 seconds. And it was at that point, it was probably like 40 foot away from me. So we were fairly close. And after that, it just quickly turned and walked briskly up into the woods. And I mean, by the time I got my jaw out of the water, I walked up to my car and got in the car and drove into Sykesville, which was about 3 minutes away. It was only like a mile. And I found the nearest phone and called the local police, Sykesville police, and told them what I encountered. So the woman who answered the phone, and I don't even think I called her the Bigfoot. I told her it was a big hairy man or big hairy creature or something like that. And she told me, well, look, go back to where it happened and we'll have somebody meet you there. Well, you know, I wasn't too keen about going back there. I didn't know if this thing was going to come back. But anyway, I got in the car and drove back. And, you know, 3-minute drive, by the time I got there, there was a Maryland State police officer standing there, and he had one of those long wooden barriers they used to use back then across the road. And I pulled up, and he said, "You got to leave." I said, "Well, look, I called Sykesville police because I saw this thing." He said, "I don't care. You got to go." I said, "Okay." So I turned around and went back home. And I lived in Sykesville, so. Anyway, about an hour later, I decided, well, look, I'm going back down there and see what's going on. So I did, and I drove back down, and there were cars everywhere. I had to literally park about a quarter of a mile from where this happened on the road and walk up to it. And when I got up there were people everywhere. There was a crowd there by the barrier, and there was a Howard County police officer standing there. I walked up to him and I asked him, I said, "What's going on? Why can't I get through?" I wasn't going to tell the guy I'm the one who made the report. But anyway, he said, he started laughing and said, "Well, someone said they saw a Bigfoot." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Okay." So, I'm standing there watching, and there are people going in and out of the woods or up and down the creek, up and down the road with dogs. There were searchers with dogs everywhere. They had a huge white tent set up across the way where I had seen this thing. There were police from every jurisdiction, and that would be state police, Howard County, Sykesville. I think Carroll County Sheriff was even there, Baltimore County Police. I mean, there was everybody. And I even saw the black Wagoneers, is what the feds used to drive back, and there were 2 of those there. And I heard the helicopter, didn't see one, but I heard it. So I mean, they had the whole 9 yards out there, and which I thought was interesting. I didn't really understand why all these people were out there. So anyway, I went back home, and when I got home, I called 3 of the news stations in Baltimore. And these were network stations, and I talked to the news editors, told them what I experienced, and they were really interested. All 3 of them. They said, "Well, look, we'll get back to you, and we want to talk to you." Okay. Well, 5 days later, nobody called me. So I called one of the stations and talked to the news editor, and I said, "Look, I called you about this," and he said, "Yeah, I don't want to talk to you," and hung up on me. Well, then I knew something was up. So to make a long story short, I later found out years later that there had been another report downstream about 3 hours earlier from a woman who had seen this thing. This was in Marysville, Maryland. That was probably 3 or 4 miles downstream from where I was. And but that still didn't explain why all these jurisdictions were out looking for this thing. So the only thing that I can come up with, oh, and I did get some confirmation from one of the police officers from Sykesville who was there, that he sent me a letter and verified everything that had happened, what he had seen. So, you know, so anyway, back in 1995, then I contacted BFRO and told them about it. They made it into a Class A sighting. But, you know, the interesting thing about what happened with all the officials and the feds showing up was, if you're familiar with the Baltimore, Washington area, there's a lot of facilities that people just don't know what they are. There's a lot of government facilities for whatever reason. And I think this thing may have been part of some type of experiment, some type of program or something, and it got away. But they were looking for it. Now, did they find it? I have no idea. I do know this. I did find out later on that there had been a flap of Bigfoot sightings in the Sykesville area back in the early 70s, and they had titled it the Sykesville Monster. And what had happened was a lot of the families and residents living along the river in Sykesville were having their homes and garages and chicken pens and dog pens being broke into. And some people had encounters with this thing. And, you know, the way they described it was very similar to what I had seen. So that's when I got really interested. So at that time, when the sightings had occurred, the only media that took the reports was the Baltimore Afro-American newspaper. And the main reason was that all these families were African-American. And I happened to work with one of the gentlemen who was related to some of these people. And I had no idea about the Sykesville monster sighting. So he contacted me, and, you know, I contacted him, and he said, look, I can get you in to talk to these people that had sightings. And I did. That's where that was my first cryptid investigation. And I was really getting a lot of information. And in fact, I had people coming forward who had never reported it, who were afraid to. And I think there were like 6 original reports made. I had 17 people talk to me. So it was a lot of stuff. And I know it was factual because one of the local police officers in Sykesville had gone to investigate something in a garage. And when he went to the door in the garage, the door was literally busted through, and the door fell on top of him. This thing ran out. He saw it. So yeah. And over the years, there have been 4 Class A Bigfoot encounters or sightings in the Sykesville area since my sighting. So even though it's much more built up compared to what it was, that area is part of the Patapsco State Park. There are a lot of Bigfoot sightings there to this day. So and occasionally I will get a report from people who have had encounters. But that's actually where it all started with me.
Okay. Are there any more? Let's see. Ron Thomas said thank you. Lon,
I see it. I've got it up here. I got the chat up.
any more questions about UFOs or Mothman?
Don't be shy.
I'd like to hear more about Mothman. I've seen stories on TV. Oh, somebody asked a question. Michael Lloyd, do you want to turn your mic on and ask your question?
Sure. Hello. Yeah. Anything on the news front? Any interesting insights or anything that you have heard through the grapevine or through your investigations that might be new that anybody would want to No, or even updates or anything like that?
You know, we get new stuff all the time. I mean, I'm currently involved with this, and I have been involved with this Chicago Mothman phenomena since, well, really it started back in 2011. But my team has been actually boots on the ground with this and taking reports. We actually had 141 reports at this time. And all these reports can be found on either phantomsandmonsters.com, which is my blog site, or my team site, which is cryptidhunters.org. And we actually got a case today. So, and we're looking into that. So that'll be updated on the blog. And I update every sighting and encounter that we get. Most of the sightings and encounters since October 2019 have taken place around O'Hare International, surprisingly. I do believe that these beings that people are seeing are some type of ultra-terrestrial being. I believe they have the ability to move in and out of a linear dimension of some type. Not unlike like some other either cryptids or even maybe extraterrestrial or what people may think is an alien being. I think that some of them do the same thing. You know, the whole UFO concept is interesting to me because, quite frankly, I don't think there are really a whole lot of beings flying around interstellar to come to this planet in a spacecraft for whatever reason. I think a lot of what people see may either be Earth oriented or some other type of phenomena, not necessarily a craft. Now, look, I do get a lot of craft reports, a lot of very interesting craft reports where there have been beings associated with these craft. But for the most part, and especially over the last 20 years or so, most of these encounters with non-terrestrials or aliens are mostly done through portals, or where they have a way of getting into a home or into a bedroom or such. Much less associated with UFOs or craft, as opposed to what it used to be like. I don't discount the UFO phenomena. There's something out there. I have never seen what I consider a UFO, though. You know, I've seen a lot of lights. I've seen a lot of orbs. I've seen a lot of this, a lot of that. That may be associated with anything, a lot of different things. But yeah, it's you know. But as far as new stuff, I'm always getting stuff. I'm serious. You know, I do. I mean, and Mitzi knows I post daily. Anything that comes my way, if I think it's valid, I'm gonna report on it. But like I said, you know, we do have a few open cases. Like I said, the Chicago phenomena, the upright canine dogman phenomena here in Pennsylvania. But though I do look at worldwide cases as far as that goes, and UFO and abduction scenarios, we look at anything. If people ask for our help, we look into it.
What was the blog, the name of the blog website again?
It's phantomsandmonsters.com. The blog is named Phantoms and Monsters.
It's also on our event page, all of his links,
Oh, thank you.
book links are on our event page. So Michael from Utah, he had his hand raised. Do you still have a question, Michael? Did he leave?
You know, okay. I'm seeing. I see these coming up. Troy has asked, do you feel that some of these craft that are being seen at this time are drone devices? Physics has to come into the equation, and these maneuvers are so extreme. I think a lot of them are drone. I think a lot of these triangular shaped craft that people see too are also government or military related. look, there are some aspects to them that are unexplained. Many times people see them and they disappear for whatever reason. Is there some type of cloaking technology that's being used? Yeah, sure, something's going on. I've been hearing about these disappearing triangular craft for 20 years now. When I used to live near Baltimore, people saw them all the time. And I'm not talking about small, I'm talking about huge craft. I mean, people, I don't know if people who are familiar with the Baltimore area, there's a mall by the name of Owings Mills Mall. And it's a pretty good sized mall. It's not as big as it used to be, but we had sightings of a triangular craft that literally shattered the mall one day. It was there for like 2 or 3 seconds and just suddenly disappeared. And those are the type of sightings that we have had in the past in that area. So is that military, government, or is that extraterrestrial? I don't know. But I think there are some. I think there are some of these sightings that can be explained away, though it may be highly classified. I think many of them are military. When you said physics comes into the equation, yeah, I agree. And if there's something else that is just hard to explain, I guess you could. I mean, everybody in the world saw the Tic Tac sightings and the maneuverability of those craft. Yeah, that probably was something not of this world. But who's to say what it was? I mean, it's hard. It's hard to really make a judgment on it.
So Ron, you had a comment. I don't know if you want to share it with everybody about Maryland. Ron?
Oh, I see. He said here that he talked about not far from Frederick, Maryland. And it wasn't where I wasn't far from Frederick. And there are a lot of government biological facilities, and it has been for years. If people are familiar with Frederick, they know about Fort Detrick and the biological chemical weapon and biological weapon facility that's there. But there's a lot of places like that around Maryland. Yeah.
Okay, Jane M., do you want to ask your question? Okay,
I'll just go ahead and read it. That's all right.
okay.
Can you tell us, this is from Jane, can you tell us what your standards of proof are of proof in separating fact and fiction? I guess it depends on the actual sighting and the witness itself. I think the first thing that I always give the witness or the person the benefit of the doubt. I always do that first. But then after I start talking to them, I start realizing if they stick to the original story or they start embellishing. That does happen on occasion. And when that does happen, then I need an explanation why they're changing up. This is one thing that we have found remarkable with these sightings in Chicago, that the witnesses, for the most part, just refuse to embellish. In other words, they will tell us what they saw, what they encountered. We will push them just to see if they will embellish on it, and they stick to their story. That's remarkable, especially in cryptid sightings. It seems like the witness always seems to want to satisfy the investigator by knowing more and more and more, and that just does not work. And you got to be able to distinguish that. It's like separating the wheat from the chaff. And when I get into a case and I believe the witness is telling me truth, look, this is the way I look at case reports. When somebody has an experience and they take the time, look, there's a lot of things involved there: ridicule, fear, reporting, a lot of different things. But when they contact me and tell me their report, then I'm part of that case. I mean, I'm part of their report then. So it's my job to stick with what they're telling me and to investigate until I figure out there's something else going on, or they're just trying to pull the wool over my eyes, you know. But no, that, and I do talk to the people who work with me to, you know, listen to the witness. You know, that's the most important thing about investigating, listening and taking it all in, then make conclusions, initial thoughts and conclusions, and then re-interview the witness, see if anything's changed. And if things haven't changed, then you can be pretty positive something's definitely factual about what they're telling you. So that's how I do it.
Thanks, Lon. I didn't get myself unmuted quickly enough. I'm on.
It's all right.
But it seems like, I don't know if anyone in this group has ever read Carl Sagan's book, The Demon Haunted World.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a wonderful book, and it certainly gives you a much different perspective on a lot of the phenomena that are under discussion at the moment. So, you know, I was just curious from your perspective, do you feel inclined to believe most of those whom you interview, or are you approaching them looking for more concrete evidence of proof?
I don't really say I look at it skeptically at first. I take them at their word at first. I want to make them feel comfortable reporting to me. But then if I do have questions, and I will ask them, and then I have them tell me again. I sometimes get annoyed by that, but look, I want to know what's going on. I don't want to report something that is not factual. So, like I said before, I think a lot of times witnesses want to satisfy the investigator. They want to come up with something more fantastical than the next guy to make it sound good. And that's not what we're looking for. We're not looking to make things more appealing. We're looking to get facts. And I agree, Sagan's book was a fantastic book. Every investigator ought to read that book.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like if there is evidence of all of these phenomenon, where is it, and why doesn't the scientific community lend it any credence?
Well, see, unfortunately, that's the problem with science and what we do. You know, cryptozoology it's not really a science at all. It's basically working off a theory that something may be there, but it's something that cannot be identified by science. And if it can't be identified by science, then most scientists will dispute it or just not even bother with it. You know, I was talking to Mitzi about this earlier with reporting agencies like MUFON and BFRO for Bigfoot. When it comes to this possible supernatural aspects to the phenomena, these reporting agencies want to run away from it as fast as possible. MUFON does not care, other than what they would tell you. They do not really care about alien encounters, abductions and such. They really don't. And when they do get a case in the CMS, they very rarely will look into it. And when they do look into it, a lot of times they frustrate the witness, and then the witness will come to me. I have gotten a lot of cases that MUFON has just pushed to the wayside and have found evidence, just like the Chicago Mothman case. That was originally given to MUFON, and MUFON just discounted it right out of hand. David Eckhart, who's a gentleman in Pensacola, Florida, who has had multiple encounters, he had tried to get MUFON to take him seriously for 5 years. The director, whose name at the time, I think his name was Glenn Bell, I think that was his name. Anyway, he just discounted it. And I took his case over. You know, I did have questions for David from the beginning. I mean, it took me about 6 months till I finally started seeing evidence that, yeah, there's something definitely going on here. But still, the reporting agencies really don't like to get into something other than the nuts and bolts of what they do, either alien craft or physical UFOs, and at BFRO, actual flesh and blood beings. They totally discount the supernatural, possible supernatural aspect of Bigfoot, and that they may be ultra terrestrials and may be able to cloak or move into other realms and such, which I think most cryptids probably are ultra terrestrial. There's a lot of, there's a lot of evidence that there's something else going on. We don't find bodies. We find very little evidence. Most sightings are very fleeting. Little photographic evidence that's really decisive. A lot of blurred images and such. Occasionally something will come up that looks very, very good, like the Patterson Gimlin film. I believe that's actual Bigfoot. And there have been others. But yeah, I just really I think that's the way that we need to follow up with cases and give the person the benefit of the doubt, go forward and become part of the case, and hear them out.
Sure. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ricky. Do you want to ask your question?
Do I want to unmute? I thought Lon is just reading all this and he could.
You
read
want to talk
all
about
Skinwalker.
Well, I do see it. I mean, have you followed the happenings at the Skinwalker Ranch? Let's put it, okay. Skinwalker Ranch, that's kind of I know the whole story about Skinwalker Ranch. I know the historical stories about it. I know all the phenomena that's supposedly had happened there. I read the book, George Knapp's book. I've talked to George about it. I talked to Colm about it. When Robert Bigelow bought the ranch and did certain classified experiments or whatever he did there. And now the TV show, the actual Skinwalker Ranch is supposedly owned by one individual, but more correctly, the state of Utah owns it now. They expanded the ranch beyond the original borders and have made it harder for people to get close to the original borders. I see, I have watched that show a couple of times. I'll be honest with you, I don't necessarily believe a lot of what they're talking about. Because quite frankly, I don't think there's any real clear evidence of it. I had been a critic of a lot of the ufology world, be honest with you. But I need to see more evidence at Skinwalker Ranch to conclude that there was really tangible evidence that it is an area that has been showing some extraordinary phenomena. Now, look, I know the Ute tribe is scared to death of the area. The whole legend about it used to be Navajo land that was cursed when the Ute pushed them out, and a Navajo witch cursed the land, and now it is what it is now. I know that history. I've talked to elders about it. A lot of them verify, not all of them, but some of them do. But as far as what they're saying is going on there, it's still open to interpretation to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of people with titles, men with titles, well, women too. It's quite interesting, and a lot of money has been invested in there. And talk about UFOs within the mountain. And I mean, there's also talk about UFOs that go into the ocean and the caves. So they're everywhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have investigated a lot of the USO phenomena, a lot of, a lot of things that people reported in a lot of different areas. The fact that what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch, it's more of them telling us what's going on as opposed to us actually seeing evidence of something going on. If they ever disclose with more of an open mind as to what's really going on there, and well, not an open mind, a more critical mind, to where they can show us concrete evidence other than using production value, advertiser happy evidence, then yeah, okay. TV shows are one thing, but actually coming forth and showing evidence that that really proves as to what they're saying is another. So see, that's a lot of the problem I have with paranormal television, and that involves all aspects of paranormal. They have to make the advertisers happy, and something's got to happen on the show. People just like I'll admit I'm stuck on it. It's just like the Curse of Oak Island. I've been watching that show now since the beginning, and boy, they just keep dragging that thing out. They keep dragging that thing out, and it's like I'm a sucker just like everybody else, because I'm more interested in the history value of it as opposed to them finding treasure, to be honest with you. I find it fascinating, some of the stuff that they're coming up with as far as historical evidence. I don't care if they ever find a piece of eight. I don't care what they find. I'm just more interested in the actual history of the island itself.
Our entertainment value.
Yeah, it's entertainment value, absolutely.
The thing with Skinwalker Ranch, there's a lot of people who will be discredited. I mean, they've got titles, there's money behind that. It's like, how foolish can they be for the sake of entertainment? I don't know. Yeah, well, I agree with you. What they do drag it out, and it starts to get a bit ridiculous after a while. But oh well.
Yeah, a lot of these shows jump the shark pretty early. And they're money makers, and they, every once in a while they'll bring somebody with a name on there that kind of adds a little credence to it again. So then they get more people watching it again.
Like William Shatner, right?
Absolutely. He's a perfect example. I mean,
yeah,
great guy.
Yeah.
Fantastic guy. I've been in the company of William Shatner, great guy to talk to, but he doesn't let many bucks go free from his pocket. If it's offered to him, he's going to take it.
Well, he's in the entertainment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, Michael Lloyd, I know, Lon, you talked about this, about the Tic Tacs and the release of the government video and show Unidentified.
Yeah, just like the Tic Tac UFO thing. A lot of investigators who have been involved with ufology or UFO sightings knew about the Nimitz case years ago, and it seemed that as time went on and more Congress people were clamored about, we need to see the evidence, we need to see the reason why money's being spent, this and that. Well, then they had to come up with something, and that Tic Tac UFO and Nimitz thing was by the time unclassified, and I think they spoon fed it to the public to satisfy a few people. it is a remarkable film. It really is. I mean, if the speeds that they're talking about are realistic, if that film is a realistic film, then it is a remarkable film. So, but I do believe that any disclosure, anything, is not going to come voluntarily from the military or the government unless they absolutely have to. You know, if a spacecraft lands on the White House lawn one day, and you know, then they're going to have to come forward because we all see that. But you know, I just am very skeptical about military and government disclosure for the most part, and that's just not for UFO. That's for anything.
So Jane kind of elaborated as you were talking about Skinwalker Ranch, that she had thought that the phenomenon Skinwalker Ranch has greatly diminished and or ceases. So,
Well, you know, this, let's put it, I just have not seen anything that really makes me think otherwise than what I did before. You know, there was a lot of strange phenomena originally being disclosed about Skinwalker, where a lot of cryptid activity was going on, a lot of different things were seen, a lot of spirit activity and UFO activity as well, a lot of strange lights. You know, there's a lot of areas in the world where a lot of strange activity takes place. You know, we've got a place here in Pennsylvania called the Chestnut Ridge. It's just loaded with activity, just a lot of activity. I live near Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It's known for hauntings, but there's a lot of other stuff that goes on there. We have Bigfoot sightings. We have UFO sightings there. We have a lot of different stuff that happens there. I honestly believe, like Skinwalker Ranch and other places, they are collection points for energy, and because of geology possibly, and that it's conducive to a lot of unexplained activity. Now, you know, I say that, I don't know, you know, that's just a theory of mine. Like I said before, until I see something more conclusive, then maybe I can, you know, maybe give a better judgment as to what I think is really going on there. I just don't know what's going on there.
does anybody else have any other questions? Did I hear you mention that you had an experience with UFOs, Lon?
I had never had a UFO encounter that I know of. I did have an encounter with a winged humanoid back in '88, which I believe ties into why, and I am making a big assumption here as to why this Chicago phenomena has kind of landed in our lap, because what I saw back in 1988 is very similar to what people are seeing in Chicago. I don't think there's much relation to the Mothman of Point Pleasant. These winged beings are something entirely different, though they may actually come from the same place. They may come from the same realm or dimension. But yeah, I mean, I you know, from the very beginning, I started believing that there was a connection with my sighting, with people in the sighting, seeing out there.
So Troy is the next question. Troy,
Yeah, Troy says the Tic Tac UFO would be an example of drone technology, be it man-made or extraterrestrial developed. There's no way that something organic can exist within something that can accelerate and change direction on a dime. Oh, I agree with that. It is extraordinary phenomenon. I absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I've never said that I believe it was fake. But I think it was, it was declassified by the time they released it, and they kind of spoon fed it to us, and a lot of us knew about it previous to that, but the public, of course, didn't for the most part, and yeah, it made big news.
You also alluded to, and I believe too, because about our own government having crafts as well. So what are your feelings on that?
What again?
You had alluded to about us having our own crafts,
Yeah.
UFOs. I believe too, because I saw some when I was younger over a military base, because I used to live near a military base. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I believe there is something. My father used to be with the 509th Bomber Wing, which is the same bomber wing that was at Roswell, though the years later. And a lot of the guys he served with were at Roswell. And he became part of the Strategic Air Command then later in the Air Force and during and after Korea. But anyway, he was very tight-lipped about it as I grew up. I asked him a lot of questions. And to be honest with you, I went out to Wright-Patterson with him for a reunion one year. And I got to talk to a few of the guys who were at Roswell. And for the most part, many of them were tight-lipped about it, but you could tell something happened over there. That whole Roswell thing is, there are a lot of people that believe it and there are a lot of people that don't believe it. And I don't know. I think there's something to it. From those who I corresponded with and conversed with, I don't think the whole story was told. Frankly, I think there was a body recovery, but I don't think the body recovery was exactly what they told us it was. I don't think they ended up at Wright-Patterson. I don't think they ended up at any place where others had talked about. I think they are at one of two Air Force facilities, Air Force bases in Florida at the point. And the reason I say that is there's been a lot of work at both of them over the past 20 years for a lot of stuff that's been built up consistently there. So I'll leave it at that. But I don't think, if people think there were bodies, yeah, they may very well could have been, but I don't think they're where people think they are.
Bob, do you have a question? I see you turn.
Yes. Hello, Lon and Mitzi. I have noticed just generally over the last month that I've been listening to, the talk shows, especially from Canada. And several times I've heard from the guests, they mention entities which will attach to human hosts.
Mhm.
And I've heard this multiple times, and I've noticed that usually there's no mention of what happens afterwards or how people get rid of these entities and the effects that the entities have on the people. What are the techniques to remove them? And you never hear about what happens next after these entities are attached.
Yeah. Removing attachments has not really been my cup of tea. There are usually people that are more gifted than myself that can do that. I had an interesting incident happen to me about 6 months ago. I had been just hear me out. I was involved with an investigation outside of Ellicott City, Maryland, when I was living down there. This was in 1983. It was a haunting that I actually picked up an attachment. It was of a girl, a young girl, but I didn't know I had it. I didn't know I had it until 6 months ago. And one of the individuals who works with me recognized it, and she removed it. Now, just think how many years ago that was, from 83 until 2021. She removed it, but she's much more gifted than I ever think to be. And she removed it. And I will tell you, I was slumped in my chair for a good 24 hours. I couldn't even do the blog for that period of time. I was just so wiped out. Attachments are real. Spirit energy can live on a host. They can collect energy. They can exist on a host. If they find it conducive to their existence, they will remain there. It's just like when people talk about with shadow people. You know, the shadow people, what people call shadow people, those are entities that have no real human spirit or human energy to them. Some people think they're actually extraterrestrial. I don't know what they are. I do know that they seem to be just imagine something walking down the middle of a street in a neighborhood, and they're just looking around for some place where they can exist and live and thrive. And they find a house where there's dysfunction or people that have died or illness or something, to where they can go into this situation and just live off the energy that's being expelled there. I think an attachment is very similar to that. Unless somebody recognizes it, you know, they're going to stay there. If it gets to the point where they can't exist there, they're going to leave. When I have been involved with cases where there has been a possible attachment, but an entity who has holed up in a home or apartment, and there's dysfunction in the home, and there's just a lot of general discourse, they thrive on that. There have also been cases, one example I have, where a lot of people had passed away because of an airline crash. And there were a lot of people, a lot of spirits moving about, a lot of energy moving about. And this entity was literally feeding off the souls of the dead. I think it's very, I think that's very possible. And but I do know out of personal experience, I felt 100% better when that thing was removed from me for whatever reason. I thought I was fine, but I was wiped out. I mean, a good 24 hours, I was wiped out. That's the only thing I can really say about it. I have talked to witnesses and clients who have had these things removed, not by me, but by somebody else. And they tell me that, you know, how much better they feel. There's a relief. Their general mood is much better, less depression. They can cause some very bad depression. But that's all I can tell you. That's what I have noticed.
Do you want to ask your question,
Hello?
Yes.
Lisa?
Just want to say thank you, Lon, for your answer. And I have learned so much just from your answer.
Well, that's what I'm here for. I'm glad you did.
A lot. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Lisa, did you want to ask your question? Kind of a long one.
Sure. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I just had a quick question. It's in regards to Bigfoot and if Bigfoot is similar to, say, elementals, or
Mhm.
if there's a clear difference between the two. And the reason I'm asking is I do watch some shows and I do some reading, and I've had a lot of experiences, good and bad. And I'm just wondering, like there was a show I just watched, it's Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, and it was based out of Portlock, Alaska,
Mhm.
which was an abandoned fishing village. And
Yeah, I know the story.
yeah, it was really, it actually was a little bit kind of unnerving, really. But the indigenous people in that area, you know, they really do believe that this is Bigfoot, and they're very fearful of it. So I was just wondering if, based on the mediums that went there and said that it's a dark entity and that, you know, it thrives off the fear, it's very territorial, but it has a lot of behaviors as Bigfoot. So it's kind of, but the medium said that the entity gets its energy from the earth and from the trees, which I thought was really interesting. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are on all that.
You know, that Portlock incident, I've talked to a couple investigators who have been involved with, I've interviewed a few of them. I personally believe that there is some type of spiritual aspect to it. You know, when you look back to the story of the abandonment of the settlement, they don't know why they abandoned. You know, some conjecture is that there was a killer Bigfoot in there, or something was in there causing it. My first impression is there was some type of spirit in there that just literally scared the hell out of people, and they left. It was causing issues. You know, the mediums may be right. There may be something there. You know, most indigenous people look at Bigfoot as a spirit as opposed to a flesh and blood being. And many others think that they can manifest for a period of time. Maybe that's the answer to the Bigfoot question. Maybe they're manifesting spirits. I don't know. But I think there may be something to that. That whole situation up there is interesting. But there's a lot of strange hairy hominid stories up in Alaska that just really have no answers to them. And I think Portlock probably is. Now, as far as being an elemental, it's possible. But I think that this is more of a, I don't know. I don't know if it manifests or not, but I think it's more spiritual based.
Great, thanks. Yeah, that's interesting and neat to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I think you're muted, Mitzi.
Yeah, my computer said, hey, are there any other questions? While we're waiting for somebody, because I know people have questions. Lon, do you want to talk a little bit more about your podcast? What times are they on, and how can people see you?
Yeah, my radio show is Fans of Monsters Radio. It used to be called Arcane Radio, but we rebranded everything. We're on YouTube. We do a live show every Friday night at 9:00 p.m. Eastern time. We do roundtable discussions about all kinds of subjects, paranormal subjects, cryptid subjects, UFO, alien subjects. And I do also interview individuals, authors, and investigators, researchers. I am premiering a show tomorrow night at Fans of Monsters Radio, which is called Fans of Monsters Personal Reports. And what I will be doing, and I've had people clamoring about me doing this for years now, and I've kind of pushed back on it, but what I'm going to actually do is narrate some of the accounts that have come my way over the years. And there's a lot of them I can choose from. So I'm going to pick out some and actually read them, comment on them, and then open up the chat for discussion or for questions. And I don't know how long it's going to last. I mean, how long it's going to be on tomorrow night, but I'm going to try to go at least an hour with it. But I'm going to try to pick cases that people are more interested in, newer cases, historical cases where I get a lot of questions from. We will have some photos that have been provided. So it should be interesting. I'm hoping it does well, and I invite everybody here to come look at it. Just go to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. You can search it on YouTube, and it'll be at 9 o'clock tomorrow night, Wednesday night, and I hope everybody enjoys it.
So that's the Eastern time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because some of us are in Central time, and I'm not sure, sometimes some are in Europe and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. So
It's called Phantoms and Monsters Personal Reports, but it'll be on the actual channel is Phantoms and Monsters Radio. You just put it into YouTube, the search, and it'll come up. I've also, if you go to my website, phantomsandmonsters.com, there'll be links there to it as well.
and some of those links are on our event page as well. So do we have any more questions or thoughts or things you want to maybe experience and ask Lon if he knows anything about it?
And look, folks, if you've had experiences and you want to send them to me, my email is lonstrickler@phantomsandmonsters.com. You can send it right to my email or go to my website. There is a place where you can click and contact me. I'm always looking for new information, new cases to work on. Yeah, like I said, I've got a very good team, and I got to give them all the credit in the world because they're very good, and we have had a lot of satisfied clients over the years.
Is it okay if I ask you a question? I know I came.
Sure.
I apologize for being late. I had another meeting I had to attend. But do you record this, Mitzi? Are you going to put this on YouTube so I can watch what I missed?
For them, and 2 people have promised to train me how to do that, but so far I just have them on my computer. And
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm working my way through that too, so I understand. But all right. So what I wanted to ask you, because I know you might have touched on the subject, but I wasn't here. So what about Sasquatch? Have you had experiences with the Sasquatch beings, or?
Yeah, I did talk about my encounter.
Oh, you have had encounters.
Yeah, I did. I had a Bigfoot encounter back in 1981. Actually, it's where I actually started getting into cryptids. So yeah, so I can tell you of another encounter I had. You want me to talk about the winged humanoid? I can do that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
A winged humanoid?
Oh, was that connected to the Sasquatch encounter?
No,
or is it a different one?
This was something entirely different.
Oh, okay.
when you missed the story, because he had a big long story.
About the Sasquatch? You
Yeah.
went into that already? Oh, okay, sure. So yeah, whichever one you want to.
Well, I can tell this one. I mean, I don't see any other questions. So in 1988, I was living in Baltimore. I had ended up going to a Boy Scout exposition for whatever reason. I don't know why, but when I was there, I ran into a friend I went to high school with, and it was in Boy Scouts together when I lived up here in Pennsylvania. And, you know, and this guy and I had known each other. And in fact, he used to sleep out on the Gettysburg battlefield with me at night sometimes. And he knew I was into the paranormal, and he knew I saw a lot of different things. And we both experienced a lot of things out there. Well, anyway, and we sat down, had some lunch that day. And since he knew my background, he asked me, he said, you know, a friend and I are going up to the old Camp Conawago, which is up here where I live near here now, near Gettysburg now. And there's been some strange stuff going on where a lot of these troops have been camped out into the woods by the camp, and are getting chased out because they hear these god awful screaming sounds coming from the woods. And he said, we're going up there to investigate. Would you like to come along? Well, you know, back in '88, I didn't mind sleeping on the ground back then. So yeah, I went ahead and said, okay, I'll go up there. So yeah, I met him up there that next weekend, that Friday. And we hiked into the woods, set up 3 tents, set up a campsite, had the fire going, and we were raring to go. And that first night was a dud. I mean, it was nothing going on. So we called it night, went to sleep. Next morning, woke up, and the guy who was with us said, you know, did you guys hear something walking through the campsite at night? And I did. I thought it was maybe one of those guys getting up to use the latrine or whatever. But nothing was disturbed in the campsite. So, you know, we didn't think anything of it. So we spent that whole Saturday out in the woods, hiking up and down here and there. We were out all day long. We got back to the campsite about 6 that afternoon, and it was just starting to turn dusk. And this was in October. So we sat down, had something to eat, and we were sitting around talking football and everything else guys talk about. And there was nothing going on. But I guess about 10 o'clock, we heard a screaming sound. And, you know, it was kind of innocuous. It could have been an animal or something. I didn't know what it was. So we didn't pay much mind. You know, a lot of wildlife in the area. So we thought, you know, could have been an animal. Well, anyway, hour goes by, then we hear this god awful blood curdling scream. And it sounded like this thing was moving in and out, like it was flying. And it was terrible. I mean, I can't even describe it to this day how it was, but it literally sounded like a woman screaming at you. She had a knife stuck in her back. I mean, it was that bad. So anyway, then it had our attention then. So we decided that we're going to stay up the whole night. So we're still sitting around waiting for the next scream to happen. I get up, try to stretch my legs. It's about, I don't know, it's after midnight. And I start walking around, and I walk over to the trail. The trail is right beside the creek. It was a very, very bright lit night. It was a full moon, but it was bright enough where you could see the woods and you could see the creek and everything. So I just got this strange feeling. It's like something was watching. You know, we all get that feeling. So I walked back to these guys, said, look, why don't we go out on the trail a bit and see what's going on? Maybe we can find something. So reluctantly, they got up and we all walked single file up the trail. And we weren't 50 foot away from the campsite, and we all saw it standing in the creek. Now, the creek was pretty low this time of year, but we saw the red eyes. And by the time we got the flashlights on this thing, it literally jettisoned itself into the air and made a whooshing sound. And when it reached its apex, it let out this god awful scream and flew away. Well, we hauled ass back to the campsite. And my buddy, he wasn't talking. He was scared. And the other guy asked me, he said, did you see something on its back? And I did. I saw some type of structure on its back. And I figured it was probably wings, but I never saw the wings literally unfurl itself. I mean, they were in the back, nothing unfurled. So this thing moved and jettisoned itself on its own, some unknown power or something. So anyway, we were trying to get my buddy to talk. All he said was, look, I'm not staying here tonight. I'm going up the administration building and sleep up there. And the other guy went with him. Well, I stayed at the campsite. I wanted to see this thing, you know, be curious. Me, I wanted to see what it was, but nothing happened the rest of the night. So 20 years later, I now have the blog going. And I've only told this story to a few people before that. So I decided, you know, I'm going to go ahead and put this out there and see what kind of response I get. So I wrote the story down, wrote it down on my blog, put it out there, and I got some immediate response from a guy who lived just downstream from there at Dick's Dam. Said, you know, I've been hearing that screaming sound for over 20 years, and I had no idea what it was, you know, and he could verify how awful the sound was. He never did figure it out. A couple of days later, I got another email from a scout master, who told me, you know, my guys and I were out at Conawago just a few weeks ago. And the kids went out on the trail during the day and come running back, screaming and yelling, and, you know, were really frightened. And they said they saw a dragon. And he said, you know, I thought they were pulling a leg, you know, a dragon, you know, what did they see? I thought maybe they saw a deer or something. I didn't know what it was. But he said, since I read your account, then I think they saw something. So years since that time, and up to about 4 years ago, I've had 5 or 6 sightings of this same being along the Conawago Creek. Now, not necessarily there at Conawago, Camp Conawago, but along the creek as it goes a little west and goes east and empties into the Susquehanna. But there have been several people who have seen this thing, you know, reported it to me. Now, the interesting thing about this is we started working with this Chicago Mothman. I called it the Chicago Phantom at first, with the bat-like wings, the red eyes for the most part, emaciated, dark colored, and humanoid in stature. And I'd say that 90% of the sightings in and around Chicago is something very similar to that of what I saw. So I don't know. Was I meant to get these cases? I don't know. It just seems awful strange that I had that experience, and now I'm still working on it. Now we're in our this all started in 2011, and this 2022. So it's still going on, and you know, it's hopefully we're going to get more and more answers as we go. But as I said before, I think it's a multi or ultra-terrestrial being.
And how many people have you met that have had this similar type experiences? Or
we have 141 sightings in the Chicago area. That's of cases we feel are valid.
Yeah. Has anybody had like a telepathic communication with them?
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, you hear people talk about with Bigfoot encounters and other cryptid encounters, like they're being told mind speak or some type of infrasound as to back off or stay away or something like that. And that we get people who have something very similar to that with these winged humanoids. A lot of times it's where they get the sense that they get very tired, very weak. I've had 2 women who have walked up to this thing and have literally fell to the ground because their legs got weak. So there's a supernatural aspect to it.
Yeah. Well, I know that the Sasquatch have communicated with people, right? Telepathically, and they have, you know, connected with people in that way through the third eye and things like that, along with showing physical, you know, form and physical aspects of them. But with these other kind of, well, you call them cryptids, right? So the wing, what is it called? The winged
humanoids.
The winged humanoids. The moth, is that the same thing as the moth?
Mothman, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious if anybody has had, have you heard, since you study this, because I don't study that type of stuff, so I don't really know about that, but have you heard of anybody having that kind of communication where it's more like a consciousness aspect where they're able to have, you know, communication with them psychically through their
Yeah.
senses.
I have 3 individuals on my team who are literally connected with these things now, or are communicating with them.
Okay, so are they able to get more information about what kind of beings they are and why they're here?
Yeah.
Like what their story is, what their purpose is?
They call themselves the unseen ones. That's what they refer to themselves as. Though the younger beings that are being seen are the ones that have been allowed to come out for whatever reason. I think it's like a rite of passage with them. But their elders call themselves the unseen ones. They're the ones that we're communicating with for the most part. I'm not communicating with them, but I have 2 ladies on my team and a man who works with me who's also had physical contact with one of these beings. And this is something that just started developing about 5 or 6 months ago. I have on my YouTube channel, I have 2 interviews related to this. Honestly, we're just taking baby steps at this point. They're very fearful of a man now, and they have been for a long time. I think it had to do with history and their deity status that they once enjoyed with humans. I think the monotheists are the ones that kind of pushed them aside and persecuted them at some point. I don't know the whole story. We haven't gotten the whole story. All they have been able to tell us is that they come from another linear dimension to our Earth plane, that they live in a dimension with other cryptids and other beings,
Right.
that the Sabe, which is the Bigfoot, live with them. And that there are other beings that live with them as well. Now, this is all anecdotal. This is all they've told us. I've told them, they haven't told me. But it's an interesting phenomena because the two ladies who are working on our team have had contact simultaneously. They live about 800 miles apart from each other, and they have contacted me without communicating with themselves of the same thing. So,
okay. So it happened like consecutively and like synchronistically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bizarre phenomena, but they have appeared in front of them on occasion. No real physical contact, though. We did have one of our investigators was down at the airport at the cemetery. There's a cemetery at O'Hare International, by the way. We think this cemetery is the portal area, the area where they're coming through. And he had an encounter with one of these things. This thing literally touched him on the hand, left a gift for him, left a rock. And
that's what the Sasquatch do. They leave.
Yeah, exactly, like gifting. Yeah. So so that's where we're at with this. And there's a lot more to go. I really don't like going into it now because, I know it sounds crazy to a lot of people, but if you do get the chance, I would say go to my YouTube site, Fans of Monsters Radio, and go scroll down to the archive where we have the interviews with the ladies who have been involved with this. It's titled The Unseen Ones.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that story.
Sure.
So are there any more questions? Thoughts? Okay, sometimes we end a little bit early. We got 45 minutes. Lon, do you have anything else to say?
Not really. I mean, all I can say is I gave you have the web address. It's fansofmonsters.com. If anybody has any questions or encounters or anything they want to share with me to look into or to post online or however they want, they can contact me at any time at Lon Strickler@fansofmonsters.com. The team website is cryptidhunters.org. We have our team cases on there, plus some other information. And my books can all be found on Amazon. There's 4 that are in print now. If you just go to Amazon and search my name, Lon Strickler, they'll all come up. And I think that's about it for now.
Okay, I want to thank everybody that stayed on, and few people left. And thank you again, Lon, for sharing your stories and your knowledge and wisdom. And next month, I'm hoping to get another speaker. And so good night for this evening. And thank you again, Lon, for speaking to my groups.
Okay, well, you take care.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Right. Mitzi, could you stay on a minute so I could talk to you?
Sure.
Is that okay? All right. Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of that. It's probably fascinating.